hello everyone. I'm Robert Schmidt. I'm here with our Georgia Tech Lucy Labs research team. We're here today to talk about affordable degrees at scale, a new phenomenon, a new hype. I'm introducing our co-first author, David Park. Also introducing Charankumar, Akiri, and Stephanie Kwak. And we wish to give a special thanks to our mentor, David Joyner. So next slide. Our three main takeaways of our paper. First is trends in open online courses known as MOOC-based degrees. David will providing some details on that. We're going to answer the question, what makes them different from non-MOOC-based degrees in the past? And third, ultimately, we discover that this new era of programs is similar in many observable ways. Next slide. So what this is about, now more than ever, MOOCs have demonstrated their performance as a fully functional degree platform serving millions of learners globally on a daily basis. It's here we begin our journey. Our first stop was with Georgia Tech's online Master of Computer Science, which has been heavily researched. Classes are largely project-based and assignments are, for most part, human evaluated. For our second stop, we inventoried the landscape of affordable degrees at scale with special attention to admission requirements and learning evaluations. Our final stop was documenting large online branches of more traditional universities. And in this journey, we found that the phenomenon of an affordable degree is not itself new. Next slide. In a prior research, our work builds on MOOCs and distance learning. In the literature, we discovered that massive open online courses is an online accessible course without specific restrictions that allow for unlimited massive scale participation. Also in the literature, we found limeades, which are large internet-mediated asynchronous degrees, which feature low tuition, a large distribution of students, and internet-mediated delivery. This transitions us to our research. And our research question here is, our goal in this research was to begin to understand the difference between these emerging online degree programs, traditional on-campus programs, and pre-existing online degree programs that predated the hype around affordable degrees at scale. So now I'm going to turn it over to David Park, who's going to talk about methodologies.
Thank you, Rob. So we started with the program selection where we selected several MOOC-based programs and not MOOC-based programs, and we narrowed down the list of those programs. Then we gathered the tuition information, syllabi, and syllabus information, and we analyzed the data. So for the program selection, we found 61 total programs through our MOOC partners such as Coursera, edX, FutureLearn, and Udacity. And a majority of these programs were master's degree programs. And a lot of these programs had majors such as computer science, data science, engineering, or business and public health. And we noticed that many of these programs were still in their early stages. At the time of research, about 1/3 of those programs were just announced. They haven't launched yet. And even the active programs still had their first cohort going through the process. And of these programs, our focus was on the 38 master's degree programs to gather data and perform the analysis. As for the non-MOOC-based programs, there was no central catalog where we could find all of these programs. So we had to resort to popular ranking sites where we were able to select 354 total programs. To increase the diversity of these programs, we chose a university from public, private, for-profit, and non-for-profit universities. And the majors that these programs offered were very similar to the MOOC-based programs, except it also offered majors such as criminal justice and nursing. And in addition to the master's degree, they were offering associate's and doctorate's degree as well. For these programs as well, our focus was also on the 163 master's programs. And these are some examples of the schools which were selected as part of the MOOC programs. And these are some examples of schools which were selected as part of the non-MOOC-based programs. In order to collect the materials, we first gathered the tuition information for all the non-MOOC-based master's program and the MOOC-based programs. We then proceeded to collect the admissions criteria and the syllabi information for the MOOC-based programs. For admissions, we collected degree, GPA requirements, major requirements, etc. And for the syllabi, we wanted to initially get the syllabi for all of the courses that existed. That didn't really work out, unfortunately. So we were able, however, we were able to get what we could find, and we analyzed the ones we could get. In terms of the analysis tuition, we just simply compare the tuition values across the programs. For the admissions criteria and syllabi, it was not as simple because many of the programs were very unique. So instead of having certain norm, we weren't able to gather some common information across the admissions criteria and syllabi. However, we were able to get degree requirements and GPA requirements as something that is common for the admissions criteria. For the syllabus, we really wanted to do a quantitative analysis. However, due to the challenges of securing the syllabi that's available, we had to resort to case studies. Now I'll share the results. So this is the tuition of all of the many of the programs that we have collected, where each bar represents the amount of tuition for the total program. One thing to note is that the black bar graphs are the non-MOOC-based programs, and the color bar graphs are the MOOC-based programs, depending on the provider, the partners. What we notice here is that there are very evenly distributed tuition, regardless of whether the program is MOOC-based or non-MOOC-based. So that is the tuition. Next, we have the admissions result. First is a degree requirement. Most of the programs required a bachelor's degree, represented by the gold and the blue part of the pie chart. One interesting thing about the STEM degree is that about half of the programs which required a bachelor's degree actually asked for a 4 years bachelor's degree, which may cause some issues for those with only 3-year bachelor's degrees. Moving on to the GPA, over half of the programs required a GPA, the other half did not. Most of the requirements are over a 3.0, but some STEM programs required a minimum GPA of a 3.2. We saw some other interesting information regarding admissions. Some programs required work experience from the students. I believe they were catering to the more experienced students. And some programs, despite requiring certain undergraduate major to join their program, they were letting work experience substitute for that undergraduate major. We've seen some schools which did not have a GPA requirement to compensate for that low GPA with their work experience, which makes sense since, you know, GPA, a 2.9 from 2002 may matter less than the 18 years of work experience that this person had. We also saw many standardized testing requirements, some video essays and recommendation letters. And one interesting trend was a conditional acceptance, where a student can try out individual MOOC courses, and upon satisfactory performance, they were able to continue on to the degree program. Next, I'll move on to the syllabi. So these are all of the number of courses we were able to identify. There were a total of 624 courses. Of those courses, we could only obtain roughly half of the syllabi for those programs. And of those, only half of that was considered a full syllabi, which includes the grading criteria, assessment breakdowns, and whatnot. We were able to get hands on some of the partial syllabi, which we call the syllabi with just general course description. So using the syllabi we were able to obtain, we were able to run some simple analysis where many of the courses had a midterm exam, final exam, individual projects, and they also had homeworks. Surprisingly, a lot of them had group projects as a requirement as well. We did notice some patterns based on the type of programs, where the STEM programs had many auto-graded coding problems, and the business programs had portfolio, case study, and oftentimes they had a participation policy. Technology-wise, many of the programs required not only the MOOC platform, however, they still needed some traditional learning management system in order for students to study there. And we had some courses which had on-campus courses as well. So these courses, when we compare the syllabus, the MOOC-based program had identical assignments and grading criteria as their on-campus counterparts. So to conclude the results, we do acknowledge that there are some limitations to this study. There was limited sampling, especially when it comes to the traditional online programs. And this is really just an early stage snapshot of the MOOC-based programs where its landscape is constantly changing. This was more of an exploratory study that we have done rather than systematic due to constraints in the data availability. With that said, we want to conclude with 6 observations. First is there are many traditional online programs. We have seen in the tuition that there's many other programs which have existed before the MOOC-based programs, where they're offering degree programs at a similar price point as the affordable degrees at scale. So these programs may not be as new in terms of affordability. And despite being on the MOOC platform, many of these program deliveries still relied on traditional learning management system. And some courses were even being hosted outside of the MOOC platforms. And along with the previous points, we had a lot of challenges looking for the syllabus. Many of these programs were not very open, so they might not be MOOC-based at all. And fourth, a lot of these programs resembled more of a traditional program, traditional courses, where many assessments were open-ended essays, open-ended projects, group projects, and many of these homeworks and projects were human evaluated. That is both the good news for us because it's reassuring that the quality of these MOOC-based education is similar to the on-campus counterparts. However, we do question whether we are fully utilizing the potentials of the MOOC platforms. There were some other challenges and trends as well. One is the whole bachelor's degree requirements. We did notice many students who had 3-year bachelor's program who really wanted to study in one of those MOOC-based programs. However, they were having trouble gaining admissions because they were only accepting 4-year degrees. We did some unbundling happening, just like how I earlier mentioned, the different pathways to gaining admissions. Micro-credentials such as edX's MicroMasters and Coursera specialization, those often acted as a pathway to a degree. So there are still a lot of open questions which remain despite affordability not being new, using traditional learning management system and course materials not being open. The MOOC-based degrees have been making impact. So one open question is what really makes these programs different from the existing programs? And another question is the learning outcome differences between the MOOC-based programs and the traditional degree programs. We did find some evidence in this study, but it definitely deserved further research. We could also look into financial models, incentives, and compensation for faculties. And lastly, how admissions might change when the programs are presented with unlimited capacity. With that said, that concludes our presentation, and we will be happy to take any questions.